Hello, and welcome to Inventors Helping Inventors. I'm your host, Allen Beckley, inventor of the Wonder Wallet. If you're an inventor searching for proven ways to make money with your invention, if you dream to see your product selling in stores everywhere, you've come to the right place. There's no better place to get help than from experts, inventors who've already achieved success. Every week, I interview successful inventors, asking them the questions you want to know. Tune in to learn from the experts so you can get your invention out of the tank and into the bank.
I was in the winter and I was driving back from about a 100-mile trip in my SUV, and it was winter and the roads were covered with slush and salt. And so by the time I got home, my SUV was practically white. It was so covered with salt and slush. And so it was fairly late in the afternoon, and it just bothered me as a car enthusiast. My car was just so filthy dirty.
I'm excited to share a new AI technology with you that is transforming the global business landscape. I'll show you how to use it to save time, effort, and money in your invention business. Interested? This technology is called agentic AI, or AI agents. I've created an AI agent that you can use to do a comprehensive, in-depth search for companies to license your invention. The best news, even if you're new to using AI or have never used AI before, it will work for you. I call it the Invention Prospector. On Thursday, February 26th, I'll be demoing the Invention Prospector for a small group of inventors, and you're invited to join us. Don't wait till it's too late or you'll miss out. Enroll now at allenbeckley.com/tapai, and that's TAPAI. The Invention Prospector yields a comprehensive list of 20 to 30 potential licensees for your product, delivered to you in less than 10 minutes. Just fill out a simple form, then hit go and watch it work its magic, providing in minutes what could take you days or even weeks of work to do on your own. Don't take my word for it. Here are the words of Julietta Hughes, one of my students who recently used the Invention Prospector for her art tool invention. Julietta Hughes said, "The Invention Prospector tool is a must-have resource for any product developer ready to search for potential licensing companies for their invention. Prior to knowing about this tool, I manually made searches on the available platforms of manufacturers, resulting in hours, if not days, of search for the most suitable companies to license my product. What took me hours, if not days, to find was done by the Invention Prospector in a matter of minutes, with even more refined results. As the search criteria is entered, it analyzes the information in the most customized and personalized way possible to give us the most promising results in a fraction of the time. I would recommend this tool without a doubt to any inventor." After you complete the workshop, you'll have access to the Invention Prospector to use as many times as you'd like for any invention. Make sure to attend the workshop live. You'll gain a valuable bonus: 1 hour of one-on-one coaching with me, a $197 value for free. But you must attend the workshop live to snag the 1 hour of individual coaching with me for free. How do you register and join us? Just go to allenbeckley.com/tapai and follow the prompts. It takes 2 minutes to register. But don't wait. February 26th will soon be here, and the workshop is filling up fast. Once 10 are enrolled, you'll have to wait at least another month to join a future workshop. Again, you can enroll now by going to allenbeckley.com/tapai. I look forward to helping you to spend less time looking for companies and more time inventing new products. I'll see you on Thursday night, February 26th, in the workshop. Welcome to episode number 588. Today is a rebroadcast of one of our classic favorites, episode number 402, way back to April 29th of 2024, with successful inventor Allen Boldt. As a car enthusiast, Allen kept his cars clean, but he hated that washing them was time-consuming and wasted both water and soap. So he invented a way to wash cars in less than 10 minutes, using dramatically less soap and water. I think you're going to enjoy this episode as much as I did. Allen Boldt grew up in the St. Louis suburbs. After graduating from college as a mechanical engineer, he started his career as a product design and automation specialist. He recently retired after over 35 years in various product development roles for manufacturers. He is a named inventor on many patents he helped in designing and developing over the years. Since retiring, he's been able to capitalize on having more time for his own inventions as well as hobbies. As a longtime car enthusiast, he worked to keep his cars clean. He discovered that the conventional ways of washing cars were time-consuming and wasteful of both water and soap. This led him to invent a better solution, the dirt eraser. The dirt eraser is an innovative product that provides an optimal combination of a sponge, soap, and a hose for washing cars in as little as 10 minutes, while saving water and soap in the process. Today, he and his wife Lori are enjoying life in the St. Louis area. He enjoys creating and selling unique, custom-made items from his home-based woodshop. Other hobbies include restoring and driving his classic and modern muscle cars, gardening, golfing, 3D printing, and hanging out with family. You'll want to listen to this entire interview to learn how Allen's dirt eraser washes most cars in 10 minutes using less water and soap than conventional washing methods. Also, how industry advertising has convinced consumers to wash their cars with large amounts of both water and soap, then sells them products that waste a lot of both water and soap to the detriment of the environment. And finally, why he thinks innovative products that are market disruptors, like his product, are especially challenging to market effectively to consumers. Now let's get right to our interview with Allen Boldt. Allen Boldt, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You bet. Allen, can you share a bit of your background with our listeners? Where did you grow up and go to school? And what did you do before you became an inventor? Could you share that with us?
Sure. So I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri, where I continue to reside today with my wife of 27 years. As far as school, I recently retired, so my schooling feels a little bit like ancient history, but I have a degree in mechanical engineering. And as far as your question of what I did before becoming an inventor, I had a 35-year career as at a manufacturing company where I specialized in product design, lean product development, and design automation using CAD. So during that career, which was essentially my whole life, I really saw myself as an inventor want to be and didn't really even consider myself an actual inventor until recently when I invented the dirt eraser, which was my first invention of inventing something on my own.
That's fantastic. I'd like to just highlight a couple points you made for our listeners. And how cool would it be to have a 35-year career in product design, which is exactly what invention is all about? So effectively, you would get to do inventing for the company, let's just say, and collect a paycheck every 2 weeks. So that's not such a bad deal. And also great experience for your ultimately becoming an inventor in your own right. And then, anyways, but it's nice to hear you grew up in the suburb of St. Louis and you've got a mechanical engineering degree. My degree is aerospace engineering, so I understand a little bit about the engineering mindset.
Yeah, it
So,
was very helpful. All the things I learned working for that company and being in a role where I did learn a lot about product development, just didn't really think of something I could invent on my own. And I was fortunate to be on various patents for the company, but I felt like I was just more of a contributor to some new products and not something that actually had an aha moment of something I invented until I invented the dirt eraser after I retired from my career.
Let's chat about that dirt eraser a bit. You invented the dirt eraser, and it's an innovative product that makes washing your car faster, more efficient, and it saves a lot of water compared to conventional methods. Can you briefly describe the aha moment that caused you to develop this product? And what was the key problem you were looking to solve in developing this product?
Let me start off by saying I've been an avid car enthusiast my whole life. And I think it was in 2014, I was coming back from a trip. I was in the winter and I was driving back from about a 100-mile trip in my SUV. And it was winter and the roads were covered with slush and salt. And so by the time I got home, my SUV was practically white. It was so covered with salt and slush. And so it was fairly late in the afternoon, and it just bothered me as a car enthusiast. My car was just so filthy dirty. And then there wasn't much daylight left, so I didn't have much time in the day to get out my normal wash routine and all the equipment that I had, which was pretty sophisticated to clean it properly. So I thought I'll just get out the hose and a sponge and give it a quick rinse off. So I got the hose out and started to just rinse it and a sponge and put a little soap on the sponge and began to rinse and knowing that while I have to get a little bit of water going on that sponge, otherwise I might scratch the paint. And so I began to put the end of the hose right next to the sponge and with one hand held the hose next to the sponge and put a little soap on there and ran the water onto the sponge as I went back and forth to clean the car. And I did the best I could. And it didn't really even occur to me till the next morning as I was laying in bed at about 5 in the morning. And it occurred to me that was a pretty effective way to wash the car by having that water flow right next to the surface of the car as I was washing, having that water flow. And it would be even better if I could have the water flowing inside from the center of the sponge flowing outward. And if there was a way to have the soap inside the sponge flowing outward. So that was that, I'll say, the beginning of the aha moment that said, boy, that if I could have a way to do that and make it a lot easier to wash and simplify the wash process. So that was the start of where that dirt eraser began its journey.
That's a great story. And we've all heard the slightly cliche that necessity is the mother of invention. But in this case, it's a perfect example. You had a long road trip with your SUV in the wintertime and had all kinds of mess and sludge on it. You get home and it's late afternoon. You don't really have that much time, but you still want to get probably salt and all kinds of other things off your SUV. So trying to move quickly and get the job done, you put a hose and a sponge together, and then you started realizing that if you put the end of the hose and the sponge together right next to the surface of the car and then have a little soap with it, that was a fairly fast and efficient way. And it really mostly occurred to you the next day that you'd clean the car pretty quickly. And from there, the way I got your story, the aha idea would be, but the next level to make it even better is if the water flowed from the center of the sponge through the sponge as well as the soap. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's very true. In fact, as I began later to develop that concept, I continued to learn that I could turn the flow of the water even lower because you didn't need to have the water flowing as fast because the water was flowing right at the surface being cleaned. And I also discovered that I didn't need as much soap as traditional methods because I just needed enough soap to lubricate the paint. And so there was a lot of learning that was discovered as I began to develop the product, as is true with any development of something that's new product. especially something that's a little bit of a breakthrough kind of scenario. You learn and then adapt the development of the product as you go. And that was the case with this. That really occurred over probably the next 6 months of just developing that product out in the driveway.
My next question kind of spins off of that one just a bit, and that is, can you briefly describe what your dirty racer looks like? It uses as you described, a custom designed sponge in an unexpected way. Can you also describe that a bit? And also, what is the secret sauce that allows it to save water while still providing a thorough car wash in a shorter time? And in general, can you give us a visual description of what your product looks like for our listeners to get an idea?
Sure. So the final product now, it starts with a special sponge. It's a traditional, I'll say, rectangular sponge, and there's a grid pattern that's cut into the each side of the sponge that helps the sponge conform to the car a little bit better and adapt to the various contours of the car. And then there's a a rubber hose that's about 3 feet long that goes into one end of the or into one end of the sponge. And that hose that goes into the sponge, on the other end of that hose, there's an adapter that allows you to quickly connect it to a garden hose. So there's a quick connect on that, and then there's also an on-off valve there. And so when the water flows from your garden hose into the sponge, then the water's released into the center of the sponge and it flows outward from the center of the sponge, almost like a shower head. So it flows out from the center of the sponge in many different directions. And then also inside the sponge is a small soap reservoir that protrudes out from the end of the sponge. And so when you to start the wash process, you uncap that soap reservoir and put in a very small amount of soap. And that's one of the features is at maximum, you're only using 1 ounce of soap, which is just a fraction of what you'd normally use. And then that soap weeps out into the sponge as you wash, mixes automatically at a predetermined level with the water as it flows outward onto the surface of the sponge as you wash. Is that clear?
I was going to say it's actually very clear, and I want to appreciate the fact that you described it in such detail so I could certainly visualize it, that it's a rectangular sponge and it has a grid on each side that also helps it work with the surfaces of the car. And you've got about a 3 foot long rubber hose that goes into the sponge. And as I was listening to you describe it and why it uses just 1 ounce of soap, etc., what occurred to me, what I visualized is thinking the way most people wash a car, it's effectively a hose with maybe a sprayer. For the most part, it's a powerful but very narrow stream of water, which doesn't really provide that much coverage. Where it seems like by flowing it through a sponge from the center, it feels it's like a lot more like a shower head, where it's dispersing the water into a much broader, bigger pattern that's going to give better coverage. Would that be an accurate description?
That's very true. And the other advantage of by going through that sponge from multiple directions, both with the soap and the water, is as you're washing the car, naturally, whatever side you're using of the sponge, it's contacting the dirt and therefore might get a little bit dirty. But then as you rotate, flip to the other side, the sponge essentially ends up self-cleaning or it cleans itself as you wash. You never have to clean that sponge. So as you're washing your car, even if your car is pretty dirty, like in the case with the salt on the car, as you're washing the sponge, you can wash an entire car and your sponge never gets dirty. In fact, I've got a unit that has well over 100 washes. It's over a year old. I've never separately cleaned that sponge. It completely is self-cleaning for the life of the unit. So it's a big advantage and really a testament to how it's designed to be used.
That's really ingenious if you think about it, never having to clean the sponge. But because as I think about it, one of the biggest water wasters when most people wash a car, or at least when I have, is you get a big bucket of water and you have a sponge and it gets dirty, you keep squeezing it out into the bucket, and then pretty soon the bucket has dirty water, you pour it out and put more soap into it and fill it up again. So you could go through multiple buckets of water and you're continually cleaning the sponge. Here, the sponge automatically cleans itself in such a fashion that, again, you don't have to go through all that wastage.
Yeah, not only is it a waste of soap, it's also a time waster because that's a separate step that you have to go through and clean your equipment, clean your sponge in that case. So this case, it's doing that step as you're washing, which is really nice and convenient.
For my next question, I just wanted to bring up that I suspect that there are other competitive products that at least advertise a better car wash experience than just using a hose and sprayer. Can you briefly share what clearly differentiates your dirt eraser from other car washing products that you've seen on the market? And then what would you say are the key benefits of the dirt eraser that would make buyers say yes to your product versus others? Can you share that with us?
The other car washing equipment that's on the market, the biggest devices that are out there these days that are very popular are what's known as a foam cannon or a foam sprayer, which those will do a good job, but they are so radically different. So I'll give you an example. They are a device that it's a reservoir that holds soap and it connects to a pressure washer, which means you have to buy a separate pressure washer, and the pressure washer will connect to this sprayer and it will spray mountains of soap on your car. So picture it just snowed 1 to 2 inches of snow on your car. And it looks like your car's been snowed on, but it's literally an inch or two of foam or soap that looks like snow on your car. And in fact, they make soap that is designed to make maximum suds. And then after that, you have to then hand wash your entire car and then rinse that. And that process, while I would imagine it's fun to make that much soap, it's incredibly wasteful in terms of how much soap that then goes down the drain, or in this case, gets wasted down storm sewers. And not to mention the cost of that soap, which can be, it's very expensive soap. And it's just so wasteful and time consuming to use that method. And or my method is just uses so little soap. And so it's a very different comparison in terms of that type of product. And there's other types of products, all the way down to just a simple traditional get yourself a bucket, put a little soap in it and a wash mitt and wash back and forth. Really, the only thing that's even close to a method that I have, same type of thing where you connect a brush to the end of the hose and feed water and go through a brush. And you've probably seen those at car washes, and they don't sell many of those because the downside is the brush is typically very damaging to your paint. So any type of brush that you put on their car, and same with a car wash, will just completely scratch the paint. And that's why that's the big difference between that and mine. Mine does not scratch the paint. I've done a lot of testing with mine to make sure, as a car enthusiast, that you can't have it scratch your paint. Yeah, that's some of the different products that are out there. And those products that, like the foam cannon, they do work well, but it takes an hour to an hour and a half to wash your car because there's so much equipment involved. Where my product, I can wash my car in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I really appreciate you describing that. And it gave me a clear picture that, especially the foam cannon and sprayer, it sounds like it goes completely in the opposite direction. It's going to need more water. It's going to have a high pressure washer that's going to be an additional expense. Looks like it's going to go through a lot of soap. And then you're creating a new problem, in a manner of speaking, in that you have all this soap all over your car. And now you got to rinse it off. Where yours effectively does all of that much more quickly with a lot less soap, a lot less water, and really certainly less expense. So it sounds like, from my perspective, your product, the Dirt Eraser, is an elegant solution to the problem that addresses the key elements of it, where the other products out there don't really do near as good a job of it, from what I can gather.
And the dirt eraser just greatly simplifies the washing process. And for me, I admittedly at one point started to acquire more and more complicated equipment like that. And what I found myself doing is washing my car less and less because it was such an ordeal. Yes, I would wash my car on a beautiful Saturday when it was 70 degrees, but that was starting to get more and more infrequent. Where with the dirt eraser, because I can wash my car in 10 minutes, I end up washing it a little more frequently so my car just doesn't get dirty because it's just not an involved process. So my cars are almost clean all the time because I've simplified the process, and simple is better in my view.
Oh, I so agree. Every inventor is going to encounter roadblocks and big challenges along their inventive journey. Can you briefly describe perhaps one of your biggest challenges in bringing Dirt Eraser to the market and how you overcame it? Can you share that with us?
Sure. I think one of them, and these are, I'll say, ongoing challenges. One of them is what I just alluded to. I think when it comes to people that wash their cars by hand regularly, car washing is, to some, is almost like a religion. You have people that they have gravitated to a certain way of washing cars in a certain way, and they wash their cars that way because that's the way that they like to do it, and they don't like change. And the industry for decades has portrayed soap as the holy grail of, if you're not using a mountain of soap, you're not getting a good car wash. And that is becoming more and more evident with these foam cannons, that everything is marketed around soap, and more soap is a better wash. And so I am fighting that war against soap. So when my whole premise is, not only do I use less soap, but there is so much less soap that you can hardly detect that I am using soap. When you're watching my video, the camera is hardly picking up the soap. You can see it in person. There's a film of bubbles and you can feel it, almost like when you install a decal on a window. A decal installer will have a very thin film of soap that uses to lubricate the decal. It's the same thing with my sponge. I'm fighting the entire industry of, you got to have a ton of soap, and that's just not true. And then the other challenge I face is just the typical, you invent something that is that much of a market disruptor, or something that's that different. Now you have to market and advertise it. And the marketing and advertising, which is not my forte, I'm more of the technical guy or the engineer, the person to find ways to market and advertise, has been challenging for me, or an ongoing challenge. So I'm continuing to climb that hill on both fronts.
I'd like to just touch base on the last point you made because I think it's something that's really especially worthwhile for our inventors. I'll hit on the first point also, that I really think it is true that so many people have their own method of washing a car and they focus on the experience, and they've come to think of lots of soap and all that kind of stuff. And changing people's habits is a little bit of a challenge, the way they've always done things. But I also wanted to touch bases on you talking about a market disruptor. That my favorite example that goes back far enough that most people today don't even think twice about it. And that is when the iPhone first came out, everybody had little cell phones with keypads on it, just like a little typing, like a miniature typewriter. And people liked their keyboards.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when suddenly Apple comes out with this thing on a glass surface and this, where's my keyboard? Oh, well, it lights up and you just tap on that. And a lot of people initially pushed back. They didn't want to do that. Where's the keyboard? And because it was a market disruptor, very much, I'm sure Apple had spent millions of dollars educating really consumers in the benefits of doing things in this new way. And I think perhaps in their case, saying, oh, by the way, it's not just a phone and a text for phone calls and texting. You also can have apps and games and things. And that may have brought some more people in. But my point is, it's a perfect example of a challenge. Anytime you're a market disruptor, you've got to spend some time, money, et cetera, to educate them in the benefits of doing things in a new way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing I'm finding is that even when you get the product in their hands, it sometimes takes, in my case, 4 or 5 washes for them to start to agree that, "Hey, this thing, I like it." They use it once and they're not necessarily falling in love with it because it's different. Now they have to use 2 hands. They've got the hose, they're holding the end of the hose where the connection is and the on-off valve in their one hand, and they're using the sponge in the other. They're not used to using 2 hands. They're used to dipping in the bucket with their wash mitt and their other hand is just standing there. I have to use 2 hands. It's a different experience. And so I encourage them, you got to give it some time. Just use it for a month. And so I've had feedback after they've used it for a month to say, I'm really liking this. It takes time. And I imagine that was the case with your iPhone example. They probably didn't immediately love that as well. So yeah, I agree.
The end of the day, from a high level, looking at your product, what I would say about it is there's two things consumers love to save: time and money. And the Dirt Eraser saves them both. They can wash their car much more quickly, and they don't have to go buy a whole bunch of soap, and they don't have to waste near as much water or use as much water. That's a savings of time and money. So I think that's a winner on both fronts. And that'd probably be good. If you're not already doing it, be good in your sort of marketing campaign to hit on that as well, which I suspect you do.
And the type of soap they can use, really any type of car soap. It's not necessarily if you want to go to your local auto parts store and buy the cheapest soap or the most expensive soap. It doesn't require specialized. You want to use car soap, but any type of car soap you want to use. And if you calculate, if you're a regular car washer, you'll save the cost of, this is me with my marketing cap on, you'll pay for the unit in savings in car soap in 6 months to a year, just based on car soap alone, much less what your time's worth. So that's something else. I'm starting to rethink my marketing strategy a little bit these days.
That's fantastic. Alan, as we roll towards a close, I'd like to ask you, how can our listeners reach you if they have other questions?
The Probably the easiest way is just through, I've got an email on that website. So the email, can I just share my email with them?
Oh, absolutely.
Support at mydirteracer.com. And the important thing to note there is the spelling on My Dirt Eraser. The word racer goes in the context of racer is spelled with a C, like a race car driver. So it's support at mydirteracer.com.
Thanks so much for that. Again, support at My Dirt Eraser, with everything being spelled the same, except eraser is ERACER.com.
Yes.
So support at mydirteracer.com. I suspect you're going to be getting some emails from some of our listeners. So really, Alan, I'd like to thank you for being on the podcast with us today and sharing your journey and this product and how you came up with it and the problems it solves. Really do appreciate that. And I would like to reserve the opportunity to touch bases with you in another 6 months or a year to see what you've got going on at that time.
Yeah, that'd be great. I do have another invention I'm working on, so we can hit on that one when you're ready.
That sounds great. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Inventors Helping Inventors. If you like the show, please tell your friends about it. Make sure to subscribe in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss a single episode. Talk to you soon.